Sacramento Elder Care Channel studios today with Cheryl Ashby and Max Perry from the Alzheimer's AIDS Society. Welcome.
Thank you,
Thank you
Dan.
for having us, Dan.
Max, is there a story behind the Alzheimer's AIDS Society?
Yes, there is actually. We've been around since 1981. A lot of people don't know that, but that's when we were formally incorporated as a 501c3 not-for-profit corporation. However, we were doing support groups back in the 70s and could quite possibly be the oldest support group organization for Alzheimer's in the nation. It all happened when B. Gorman was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's in her family. She came from a family of 8 siblings, 4 of which got Alzheimer's in their 40s and 50s. And the University of Colorado wanted to study their family as well as some others across the United States to see if it was environmental, genetic, or what. Well, people heard about this. And these are people before Twittering and Facebooking and emails. People would write letters and ask the Gormans if they could share what they had discovered and what research had presented with respect to their unique situations as well. So they started having support groups in people's living rooms down here in Sacramento talking about Alzheimer's in the early 70s. So we've been around a long time and we've learned to speak a lot of dementia.
What is the question that people ask most when they call the Alzheimer's AIDS Society?
Well, the question I normally get is there a cure, and if not, when? And of course, there is no cure, but there are medications to slow the progress of the disease. But cure, not so much, unless of course you're a mouse. And they have found a way to stop the progress of Alzheimer's and actually reverse it, but only in the mouse community.
Well, hopefully that'll someday translate to the people community.
And it's bad news for cats, I understand.
Once a person has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, what resources can the Alzheimer's AIDS Society provide them?
Cheryl, you want to field that one?
Okay. We have, when people call us, we first set them up with one of our blue books. Do you have that, Max? And it's actually called A Practical Guide for the Alzheimer's Caregiver. But people would come in and ask for our blue books because it has a blue cover, so we just started calling it the blue book. But it talks about the most common things that happen with any kind of an Alzheimer's or dementia patient and how to deal with that. We also provide support groups and access to any resources that the person on the phone may be calling about. We may be able to help them connect with you, Dan, right at home because they need an in-home caregiver. They may want placement because they don't have a family member that can take care of them, in which case we will connect them with a placement agency. We also do, and I'll let Max talk a little more about this, we also do some legal counseling.
True. A lot of times people are concerned about whether or not they've got everything in place for a long eventuality in dealing with the Alzheimer's patient. And one of the things that's important that people don't think about right away is the legal paperwork. You can't act for someone else unless you have legal authority in writing to do so. Powers of attorney, advanced healthcare directives. And we actually offer through a gentleman who's an attorney who volunteers his time once a month for people to bring their stuff in. He'll take a look at it, see if it's sufficient. A lot of times people have done these things years and years ago. One of the agents may not even be alive anymore, and it's time to upgrade those things. But a person can't execute new documents unless they have capacity. One of the things that Alzheimer's takes away is capacity and competency. So the earlier the better. Just like what Cheryl was saying with respect to getting help and the resources that we have. There's medications out there that slow the progress of the disease. There's ways to help people deal with their Alzheimer's patients without the conflict and the aggression and stuff that caregivers have a tendency to bring out in their loved one, unknowingly and unwittingly, but a lot of times that's the end result. And we put on caregiver support groups for those people to come in to learn how to speak dementia. And a lot of times they don't realize that although their loved one is still there, they're the one, the caregiver is the one that has to find ways to reach them. You can't bring an Alzheimer's person into our reality any more than you can walk up and pluck someone out of a wheelchair and expect them to walk with you leading the way. Left, right, left. See, it's easy. I can do it. Well, the problem is an Alzheimer's person looks okay. They sometimes even respond and act okay. So you don't think they have a disability. But it is there. And a lot of times we don't give them the benefit of the doubt that they're trying their very best each and every day just to show you a sense of normalcy. And it's fatiguing and it's wearing and it creates irritability and stresses on that. And of course, the caregiver gets stressed out as a result. The caregiver support group helps take that away and puts them in a better mode to be able to deal with someone with Alzheimer's without these unreal expectations.
Having been involved in some of these support groups, I've seen firsthand the real stress that some of these primary caregivers feel, and heard some of the stories about how, different family members get treated differently because you're the primary caregiver, and so these are definitely challenging things that people deal with as a caregiver for an Alzheimer's patient.
They're so challenging, in fact, that 2/3 of them die before their patient passes away. That's the stress level we're dealing with an Alzheimer's patient. And Cheryl does something very unique. She works with a support group for patients that are actually diagnosed with the disease. And it's interesting that they get together once a week and they don't remember anything when they leave, but phenomenal things happen.
Yes.
Do you want to give an illustration?
Honestly, when we started talking about having patient support groups, I thought, what's the point? Because they're not going to remember what we talked about 5 minutes after they leave. And the fact of the matter is that that's true. They don't remember what they talked about 5 minutes after they leave because their caregivers will generally ask them. But what happens is a load gets lifted off from their shoulders anyway, and they go home feeling like a load's been lifted off their shoulders. And we've had caregivers come in and say, I don't know what it is you do in there, but for the next 3, 4, 5 days, my loved one is so much easier to deal with than they were. And then they start to ramp up a little bit again, and it's time for another support group because we do them weekly. But one of the things that we do in the support group, which they love and I think is fantastic, is we talk about things that are in their long-term memory, which is very clear. And so we do a lot of reminiscing and we do a lot of brain exercise, a lot of laughing. It's very different than the caregiver group, which has a lot of Kleenex and a lot of tears because of the stress. But the results that come from it are just absolutely amazing, and I'm really glad that we started doing them.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard that you guys were doing that kind of group, so that's very interesting to hear.
Thank you.
So both of you have been with the Alzheimer's AIDS Society since around 2000, right?
Yes.
So what drives you to be so involved?
Well, I'll tell you, it's all started when I met John and Bea Gorman, they were the originators of the Alzheimer's AIDS Society. And at the time, I had a placement agency, and I was helping people find their resources, in-home care, placement in particular. And I met John and Bea, and I loved what they were doing, and I asked if I could become involved. And the first thing I did was in January 2000, I started my first caregiver support group. And my heart went out to those people. I felt so strongly for them and the need and the want to be able to help them in any way that I could. And then as time went by and we started doing patient support groups and I got one-on-one, hands-on with the patients as well, the love for that calling just grew. And it's my heart now, and that's why I am in the Alzheimer's Aid Society. It means the world to me.
I know it does, and earlier you told me a story that I think we really should share with our audience. Could you share that with us?
I would, Dan. Thank you very much for asking that. When I was doing a patient support group in Modesto, actually, a gentleman whose wife was in my group came up to me after the support groups one day, and he said, you know, my wife used to love to go out to dinner and to lunch with me, and she's stopped going because what she's finding that is happening is whenever we go in and we sit down in the restaurant, the waitress comes up and says, what would you like to have? And if she doesn't know right away, and you know as an Alzheimer's patient, she doesn't know right away, they don't say anything, but they stand there kind of stern looking, twiddling their thumbs and drumming their fingers on their arms. And she's feeling very uncomfortable because she doesn't know what she wants to eat yet. Is there something that we can put on a card that I can hand to that waitress that would make a difference? And so because of this situation, we got an Alzheimer's Aid Society card, and the words we had put on it very simply say, thank you for your patience with my loved one. And that worked wonders for this gentleman and his wife, and it's worked for many other people since then too. All you have to do is hand that card to the waitress, total demeanor changes. All of a sudden she's got all the patience in the world, and she says, sweetheart, you take all the time you need, I'll be back. You can hand it to somebody who's in line in the store or anybody who's maybe having a little challenge with your loved one who has dementia. And that way we solved that problem for this patient and some others. And it just...
And they started going out to dinner again.
Thank you. They started going out.
They got their relationship back.
They did. And it was wonderful to see.
That's a great story.
Thank you.
Max, can you share with our audience how the Alzheimer's Aid Society is funded?
Yes, Dan. A lot of people don't know that we're not a county, state, or federal entity. We're a nonprofit 501c3 corporation that is run by a board of directors, and all the monies that we get are from donations and fundraisers. We don't receive any city, county, federal, state monies at all. And we really rely on the support of the community that we support in order to keep our doors open and to keep our programs going. And we have a lot of programs going on right now that benefit people dealing with Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia. You have to remember that there's over 50 kinds of dementia out there. Alzheimer's just happens to be the most prevalent one. But there's, like Cheryl said earlier, dementia is a term like flowers. I might be thinking roses, you might be thinking carnations, she might be thinking petunias. Well, under that dementia umbrella, there's all kinds of dementias. Some are quite easy to deal with, like a thyroid or nutritional problem or hydration. Mm-hmm. Some are more complicated, like Alzheimer's and Lewy body or brain tumor. And the importance of knowing that is to be able to know what you can get. Like I said earlier, there's no cure for Alzheimer's yet, but there's medications out there that can slow it down. But it isn't going to help someone with a thyroid condition or hydration or something. It's specific for Alzheimer's. So you need to know what your diagnosis is so you can take the proper course of treatment. Mm-hmm. And anyway, we have a lot of programs that help with the people that are dealing with all that, from our cafes, Alzheimer's cafes, where people in the community can come and be around people with Alzheimer's, their caregivers, professionals in the field, in a setting that's quite relaxed and intimate, coffee, snacks, entertainment, brain games, things like that. You wouldn't even know some of the people in the room had Alzheimer's, but it helps to remove the stigma, which is important. Alzheimer's has a tremendous stigma attached to it. And then, of course, our support groups and our resources, the printing of our blue books. We have a newsletter that goes out every other month, which is over there, and I won't get up in front of the camera and get it. You'll just have to trust me. Go to our webpage. We have them all loaded on there as well. And it takes money to do those things. Thank God for volunteers. They are the backbone of our organization, and we thank them for that.
Well, we'll make sure that all of your contact information is displayed in the video. And
Well, thank you.
We're very glad to have you both here today to talk about the Alzheimer's Aid Society with us. We appreciate it, and we welcome you to the Sacramento Elder Care Channel.
Thank you,
Thank you
Dan.
very
We
much.
appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.